The Chicago Bulls have a very competitive loss to the Cleveland Cavaliers, and while the team made some mistakes that should have been avoidable, there's still a lot of good to take away from this game. But there's also some questions to pull away from this game as well, as Billy Donovan's rotations and how to balance that is still not really found the best balance, but that may be by design. We're going to talk about all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, man. And so the Bulls lost a competitive game last night. And I think last night is kind of the exact type of game that the Chicago Bulls do want to play. As far as the kind of the results, some of the performances and things like that. Like, let's paint a picture here, right? So the Bulls fought hard against the best team in the Eastern Conference per record right now, right? They were locked in at times on both sides of the ball. They didn't have the best execution, but they were locked in. When the Cavs went on runs, except for that last one, the Bulls basically matched every one of those runs. There were several times that the Cavs pushed the lead up, one time to near double digits, another time to where it was like a 4 or 5 point lead. And those are times that in the past, the Bulls would have let that game go by. But no, the Bulls came marching back. They came playing. They stepped up the defense when needed at times. It was just that final stretch that they couldn't. Now, turnovers and things definitely doomed the team. But one of the things that the Bulls are getting, especially with what we think their goals are, right? We'll see if this is truly the goal as the season goes on. But if the Bulls are looking to still move on from Nikola Vucevic and Zach LaVine at this year's trade deadline, they keep giving you the performances that you need to where their performances aren't going to be why you're not able to move them. Zach LaVine looked absolutely amazing on backdoor cuts, going to the rim at time, how he finished around the rim. And he hit those isolation jumpers that were needed that really changed the momentum. And even when defenders isolated on him, Zach LaVine, his offensive versatility is right back to where it was at the height of his game. This may be truly the best version of Zach LaVine. No, he's not averaging the points that he averaged at the height of his career, before, but the defense is better, right? And overall, he's playing more within the framework of the game, and you're seeing a better overall basketball player. It's not just about scoring points. The versatility that Zach LaVine brings offensively is great, and that's the thing that we all expected, right? That's what you should expect from Zach LaVine. And then you look at defensively. The Bulls moved Zach LaVine on to Donovan Mitchell in the second half of the game. He guarded him some in the first half, but in the second half, and Donovan Mitchell was held to 3 for 11. Now, he still was able to put up points on the board when needed, but you're seeing Zach LaVine be more engaged defensively than I think we've ever seen Zach LaVine this consistent. He's had spurts of being really locked in defensively, like when he wants to make a point. And maybe this is a season of Zach LaVine just wanting to make points, because it's really good to see that aspect of things. The 26 points, he did on effective shooting, 12 of 20 shooting, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. Like, Zach LaVine was all over the place yesterday in a good way, meaning that he was impacting a lot of areas of the game of basketball. Same thing for Nikola Vucevic. Vooch is just Mr. Consistent at this point for the Chicago Bulls. Like, regardless of what you can say about a lot of the Chicago Bulls players, Nikola Vucevic is the guy who he's consistent. 20 points on 15 shots. Yeah, he didn't have the rebounding night that he needed to have last night, but 3 assists, 1 steal, 1 block as well. Like, it was really good from Nikola Vucevic. And so if the Bulls are truly looking to shop these players, like I said, their performance on the court won't be one of the reasons you're not able to move them, not this year. With Zach, the contract is still a thing. It's still what we're hearing. There's still teams a little weary about Zach LaVine's contract situation, and that could keep them from being in on a Zach LaVine trade. But we'll see how that goes over. And I also think the way that Zach's playing, like this complementary game he's playing, because the thought process is always that if Zach is moved, he's not going to go to a team where he's maybe not even the number 2 option. He may be the number 3 option, right, to add to what they have. And so the way that he's fitting in with these players, if he goes to a team with even higher expectations and hopefully a better defensive framework, Zach LaVine could definitely help some teams in their push for the playoffs or whatever else it is. The question is that contract for Zach LaVine? But his performance, not a question. The injuries, that's still been a question. He's missed some games this season. But I think overall, Zach LaVine's performance is eliminating a lot of the questions that were around him this season. Nikola Vucevic, like I said, the most consistent Bull. And it's not the contract for Nikola Vucevic. I think it's the age is one thing, and then what the value the Bulls would want back is. Like, I was in a conversation in the comment section with Joe, the blacksmith, in the comments of the last video, and he posed a great question saying, well, what will second round picks really benefit for the Bulls? And my response to that was, well, aging player Nikola Vucevic, who, is putting up great numbers. The Bulls aren't necessarily winning a bunch of games, even with him putting up those numbers. Those second round picks could be assets, right? And it's not always about what do you draft with those second round picks, because, even though the Bulls have had luck in the second round, Ayo Dosunmu's really good, right? We're still waiting to see what exactly Julian Phillips is going to turn into. But it's more about also the asset allocation and what can you use if you do need to make subsequent moves. We've seen it in the NBA. Throwing in second round picks is kind of like a sweetener to kind of make some things else happen down the road, right? So it's a lot of different aspects of why, right? I think also the money aspect, if you can get back maybe an expiring deal and not have to pay your aging player and maybe risk that he does hit a downturn or whatever, and then he's unmovable. I think it all comes down, really when it comes down to Vooch as well as almost anybody else, is that this Bulls team hopefully is trying to learn from the mistakes that they made in regards of moving off players after their value has gone down, right? And so you may want to strike where that value is hot. Now, I do hope that it's more to the end of a first-round pick than 2 seconds personally, but it really depends on where those seconds are. So, and that's all speculative, so we're not going to get caught up in that. But great question from Joe the Blacksmith. So it really comes down to Nikola Vucevic and Zach LaVine, if truly, and I keep saying if because, take everything that comes from writers and rumors with a grain of salt, because we've seen teams pivot before, right? But if this continues, then, the Bulls are going to be able to, their performance aren't going to stop the Bulls from being able to move them. Now, one also could say that Nikola Mirotic got the Bulls a first-round pick, and Vooch has been playing even better than Nikola Mirotic was at that point in time. So look out for that as well. Like, it really is going to be determined by the value that the Bulls are going to get out on the open market for these guys. But overall, in this type of loss, to be competitive against one of the better teams in the league, to also go down to the wire basically with them, and your own execution is one of the things that holds you back. You got some important minutes as far as learning how to win, right? Come out there, but there are still some questions in it, and we'll talk about those. Like, the Bulls have got to be better as far as turnovers. And Josh Giddey talked about it after the game. He said this: we're emphasizing pace and the way we want to play, but it's also my job to recognize if we haven't gotten a good look in a couple of trips down, slow the game down. It's probably where a few turnovers came from, just leaving my feet. It's been a little bit of an issue, but I'm the first one to look in the mirror and say, I've got to be better in that area. And that's really good recognition from Josh Giddey. And that's, one thing you could say from him being a Chicago Bull in this time is that he seems like he recognizes what needs to be done. Now, going out there and executing it can be different at times, right? Like, you gotta execute it. Identifying it is the first step, but you gotta be better at it. Kobe and Josh Giddey have to be better at turnovers down the stretch of games. They made some key turnovers that really hurt the Chicago Bulls team. They gotta be better. Other things that kind of stood out as bad is, like, Patrick Williams had a good stat line last night, but most of that came in the first half of the game. The second half was a mix to bad bag for Patrick Williams. It just was, right? So you got to be better in that area as well. And we unfortunately, let me not say unfortunately, that may not be a fair statement, right? But you need more from Patrick Williams as far as the execution piece. I think, like, Patrick Williams scoring 13 points is probably around as a fifth option on offense. He's going to be 5 of 13 from the field. Isn't necessarily the worst percentage, but then when you look at how much of that came in the second half of the game where Patrick Williams just was making mistakes at the rim and things like that, like, he has to be better. Like, Patrick, and it keeps being the same story really for Patrick Williams. If he just is a little bit more aggressive and a little bit more consistent, like, we're talking about Patrick Williams even as a fifth option is probably getting about 15 points. And, getting 10 rebounds in this game is really good, especially for Pat. And we know how bad he's been at rebounding at times and not being able to get it. But he went 1 of 5 in the second half of this game. 1 of 5. And while the other stats, 4 rebounds is really good. He got a steal in the second half of this game as well. Only 1 turnover. That's solid, right? It's okay. But you just got to execute. And he went 1 of 3 from three-point range. We're talking about if Patrick Williams just make 1 or 2 more shots, and some of those were easy at the rim shots, then look at it. You're looking at a 15 and 10 night, a 16 and 10 night from Patrick Williams, and how close this game was. Of course, those miscues there are maximized. They just are, and so that's really what you're still looking at, those aspect of things for the Chicago Bulls team. But outside of, like, the execution, which we know points in the paint, turnovers. You gave up 31 points off turnovers. Like, that's really difficult to overcome. In the second half of the game, you gave 13 points off turnovers alone. Like, you got to be better than that overall. But 35 points off turnovers, I made a mistake there. And then at the rim, too, we got to be better at defending in the paint. We gave up 28 of 43 shots at the paint for 65% field goal shooting percentage in the paint and 56 points in the paint by the Cleveland Cavaliers. It keeps being a thing. And I said it in last night's post-game show as well, is that this may just be a team that just is not going to guard the paint well this entirely of this season unless we have a major overhaul to the team, not just the system. We just don't really have any type of deterrent from getting to the rim. And, teams are going to get in rhythm with that. But outside of that, there's still some questions. Billy Donovan's rotations, still a little questionable at times, right? Not to say that I question this part, but you're still seeing Ayo close over Giddey, even though, like, Ayo didn't have the best night offensively last night. But it's the defense from Ayo Dosunmu that's putting him in those rotations. But then you got to also ask yourself, like, are you balancing that right? Are you getting the best balance out of that? And that just continues to be something to watch here, is that with Billy Donovan just trusting Ayo more in that clutch time, in that fourth quarter than Josh Giddey to close those games. And, I'm sure that may be frustrating. Now, Giddey did play 31 minutes today. That's another question by Billy Donovan. He didn't trust his bench today. Outside of the 31 minutes to Ayo Dosunmu, Billy Donovan didn't trust the bench, even though Dalen Terry gave you some quality defensive minutes today. 2 for 4 again. He's learning to be efficient, not take bad shots. 4 points, but 4 rebounds in this game. He had some really good rotations on players like Donovan Mitchell and players like Darius Garland. And Dalen Terry continues to be the guy that is like, you really have to watch his minutes to really understand what he does as far as the defensive side of the ball and how he's impacting that. Only 4 minutes again for Matas Bucilis. It is what it is there. Billy Donovan, a combined 9 minutes from Adama Sanogo and Matas Bucilis in this game, in a game where I would say that it's fair to say that you needed some size, right? So Adama Sanogo not being out there to be that guy. Now, he didn't play terribly bad in the first half of the game where he got those 5 minutes. I would have thought that he would have deserved another 5-minute stretch, 4 or 5-minute stretch to see what he can bring. But, that goes back to Billy Donovan in close games. He's almost terrified for the momentum to change. You trusted the bench to change the momentum against the Atlanta Hawks, but then turn around in the next game, another close game in the fourth quarter, like outside of sitting your players down just to get them a breather, you didn't really trust your bench outside of Ayo Dosunmu. 10 minutes for Julian, 15 minutes for Dalen Terry, 1 minute for Taylor Horton Tucker, which THC gave up like 6 points in that 1 minute. So there's that part of it. But I'd just like to see a little bit more trust to your bench unit as well from Billy Donovan, because you got to get those guys in rhythm, right? He goes back and forth on trusting the bench and not trusting the bench, and that's going to lead to up and down performance. Now, overall, the bench unit didn't give a lot great in this game, so I'm still going to, still be able to say that, like, the bench unit was kind of hit or miss. A lot of turnovers. The defense wasn't as crisp as we've come to expect from the bench unit from the Chicago Bulls. And so, those are those things as well. And you got to look at that. The Cleveland Cavaliers outscored the Bulls off the bench in the second unit 39-16. And keep in mind, 10 of those points came from Ayo Dosunmu. So, you got to look at that part as well. But the Bulls are starting to make some progress, and this was a fun loss. That's the thing. Fun bad is a thing, and that is probably going to be a quote this season for this team. A lot of things are going to be fun bad for this team. Now, outside of that, we did get an update on Lonzo Ball yesterday. Billy Donovan said that Lonzo Ball is no longer in a brace, which is good because keep in mind, they were isolating that wrist because if it wasn't isolated, they were worried that it was going to turn into a grade 3 sprain that would then need surgery in this season. So it's good that he's out of that. They plan for him to start dribbling the ball some this week, and then they'll see how he responds to dribbling the ball, and then that will set the time, or allow them to set a more clear timetable for Lonzo Ball's return. Billy Donovan saying this in the direct quote. I think at this point, now where he can get the brace off and start to do some stuff, see how he responds. I do think he has some soreness, and certainly it's been a slow progression for him, but he's gotten better. Because the injury is somewhat unique from the perspective of we don't want to do anything that sets him back, they'll be cautious there. I'd say the first week was slow with the healing and pain, but I think he's now starting to feel better and better. We've got some upward ticks. There's been no setbacks. And he also clarified that it has nothing to do with his knee. And I've seen a lot of you guys in the comment section saying, oh, it feels like they're covering up a knee. You do realize the NBA just fined the Philadelphia 76ers $100,000 for not disclosing injuries correctly. So I don't think that the Bulls are going to play that game with the NBA, but I understand the pessimism there. But overall, like, Lonzo's just a slow healer. He's been a slow healer his whole entire NBA career. If you go back and look at every initial timetable, we're not even talking about the knee, which was a serious, extremely serious injury for the amount of time that he was out. But when you look at every just about injury that Lonzo Ball has had, he's always behind the first expected timetable by a week or so. He's just a slow healer. Some people are just slow healers. I'm not judging him for that or whatever else it is, but that's just where it is. He's a slow healer. And so, I'm not surprised that initial 10-day time span given to him, he's well behind that. But the key thing is just getting Lonzo Ball back on the court. We need him when he's healthy and available. He offers such a unique skill set that the Bulls do need. And so overall, glad to hear that Lonzo Ball is getting back on track for the Chicago Bulls. And let's hope that this continues for him and that we just see Lonzo Ball continue to just make those steps in the right direction and progress. That's the thing that we want to see from him more than anything. But with that said, it's a game day. So I want to play your guys' voicemails that you left specifically about this game, mainly because I don't want to risk the aspect of not being able to, of it being so outdated after the game. But let's go ahead and get into it. This one's from Spencer.
Hey, what's up, Haize? This is Spencer. I live in Indiana, big Bulls fan. Just wanted to get your take on Patrick Williams. I watched him play in the Cavs game, and honestly, been waiting multiple seasons for this dude to just wake up and smell the roses. And quite honestly, I'm tired of seeing him in a Bulls uni. He does all these crazy sporadic plays, or he'll just run around. I fail to see him do a lot of productive things. That's just my take. I think we should have traded him or dumped him earlier, but let me know what you think. Peace.
Listen, there are a lot of people that are tired of seeing Patrick Williams in a Bulls uniform, and I always try to err on the side of kind of being more kind of understanding in a way. The fact of the matter is this: Patrick Williams, the type of player that he is, the inconsistency, no, right? But a player that is extremely good defensively, that can shoot the three ball, is always going to have a role on the team. The difference is, and I've said this before, there are a lot of teams in the NBA that have players like Patrick Williams in their starting lineup, and their fan bases embrace those players mainly because they probably weren't drafted fourth overall. And I think that's a big part still of the cloud hanging over Patrick Williams' head, is he was drafted fourth overall. But the way that I look at it is this: he didn't choose to be drafted fourth overall. He didn't tell the Bulls to draft him fourth overall. They got a role player at number 4 overall. If you actually go and look at the history of fourth overall picks, there are a lot more role players that come out of that than star level players. It is what it is. It's not just easy to just trade and dump a player. Everybody likes to think about this thing as far as oh, they're playing bad, let's trade them. Yeah, that's not how it really works. And also with the Bulls going younger and wins not necessarily being the thing that this team may be prioritizing right now, there is something to be said that Patrick Williams at 23 years old, this is the time if you're going to take a risk. And the contract is not that bad. I know people hear the $90 million and the $18 million per year, but that is basically slightly over a mid-level exception at this point. And with his youth, he was probably going to get that regardless. Did the Bulls overpay a bit? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I won't say that they didn't, but at the end of the day, man, it just comes down to this, is that Patrick Williams is still a player. When you look at how he guards centers and the versatility that he brings defensively, it's still making an impact for a team that does need defense drastically. And so do I think eventually is Patrick Williams going to lose that starting position if he keeps playing the way that he is? Yeah, he absolutely could, because it's not like not like it's hard to give more than what Patrick Williams is giving, especially consistently on the offensive side of the ball. But I think when you're looking at this team and what they need defensively and how Billy Donovan has basically turned Patrick Williams into one of his most versatile defensive weapons, they're going to keep him around for a little while. And they're going to, in going younger, they're going to give time and opportunity. I'll tell you this, as much as Julian and Modest are, I think, have higher potential than Patrick Williams, I think that eventually Modest Vucevic is going to take that role. Or if Julian Phillips is going to eventually take that role, or maybe both of them end up being the starting forward combo for the Bulls in the future. That could be a chance of that, right? I want to be clear and evident on that. But I think outside of that aspect of it, you also have to look at right now where the Bulls are. It's cool. We are going to be frustrated by Patrick Williams. In no way I'm going to tell anybody they should not be frustrated by Patrick Williams right now. It is. He's sporadic, as you said he is. He's inconsistent at times, and that, a lot of times, most times, and that comes down to aggression. But where the Bulls are right now, they sit in a place where let's see what they have. And the thing that I always say is this: Patrick Williams has the same basically stat line and performance overall as a lot of role players that we have appreciated here in Chicago. The difference is we saw those players we knew were giving effort, right? And if you're a front office and you're going younger with your roster, you would look at that and say, realistically, hey, if we can just get this guy to give more effort, then where we're going to be. I can understand the team being caught up and enamored in that a little bit, but you can only stay enamored in that so long, especially when you drafted dogs that are going to have the mentality that you want. Still aren't playing them enough right now, but I'll say this. For the people that are upset about Patrick Williams, his time starting for the Chicago Bulls, it's more time behind him than in front of him, I think, starting, unless he finally makes that step, that leap, or whatever that the Bulls have been waiting for him to make for a long time. Brighter days are coming at that power forward position as far as more effort, more energy, even maybe more consistency. But Patrick Williams, even if he does move to the bench, can still be a productive player for the Bulls. It just comes down to how the Bulls use him at that point in time. And we'll see. But it's not as simple as you play bad, you get moved. It's just not that, right? And assets are a thing. Because I tell you what, the Bulls are right now, I think, terrified to let players go and then blossom elsewhere. That's why you saw Patrick Williams get the contract that he got. Now, you can only rely on that so long. And so as forwards keep being a thing, and you look in this draft, the Bulls could very well get a power forward and things like that. We'll see where it goes. But guys, thank you for that time. Thank you for leaving that voicemail. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. bullscentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.